There are many different passages in the Bible that talk about the land. In this message, we are going to look at a few different passages that take us from the creation of the land to the restoration of the land, and why the land needs restoration. Genesis chapter 1 opens with the lines, "In the beginning, God created the skies and the land. The land was a completely chaotic wasteland." The rest of the creation poem in Genesis 1 is about how God brings order and purpose to the futility of the land, bringing it from a chaotic wasteland to a place with intention and purpose that God sees as very good. Genesis 1, verses 9 through 13, tell us about the emergence of the land in the biblical story. It is on the third day of creation that God creates dry ground, and God called the dry ground land. Then God said, "Let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants, and the trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it according to their various kinds." And it was so. The land produced vegetation, plants bearing seeds according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. Then on the sixth day, God fills the land with creatures, with livestock, with creatures that move along the ground, and wild animals. And God again saw that it was good. Later on the sixth day, God creates humans, which is the word Adam, not to be mistaken for the male human's first name. God then charges humans with caring for all the animals of the seas, the sky, and the land. Next, God says, "See, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is upon the face of all the land, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast on the land, and to every bird in the air, and everything that creeps on the land, everything that has the breath of life, I have given you every green plant for food." And so it was. God saw that everything that they had made was indeed very good. In Genesis chapter 2, we get another take on the creation of the cosmos. This creation account is different, but it reiterates the relationship between God, the land, and humans. Again, the humans are tasked with caring for creation, for the land and animals. This caring for creation has often been referred to as the Adamic covenant, and it is the first covenant between God and humanity. Covenants come in different forms, but in the biblical story between God and humanity, the terms of the covenant are dictated by one party, God. And then all parties maintain good relationship through keeping the terms of the covenant together. In this case, humans are to care for the land within the scope and boundaries laid out by God. And in doing so, the land and humanity and God exist in peace and harmony. The story takes a turn when the humans fail to live by the terms of the covenant that were laid out. And this results in a disequilibrium between all parties. The relationship between God and humanity is broken. The relationship between humanity and the land is broken. The blessing of the peace and harmony is replaced by a curse of strife and hardship. God tells the humans, Cursed is the ground because of you. The land is now living under a curse because of the way that the humans failed to care for creation. Side note. In the biblical story, there are a few more covenants made between God and different people as representatives that are to usher in the restoration between God and humanity, or reconciliation between God and humanity and the land. These subsequent covenants are always an attempt by God to restore creation to peace and harmony, which means putting to rights the curse that was caused by humans. The broken relationships that humanity carries must be reconciled so that all of creation can experience the blessing of peace and harmony once more. Now, this brings us to Isaiah 24. Now the Lord is about to lay waste to the earth and make it desolate, and they will twist its surface and scatter its inhabitants. The earth shall be utterly laid waste and utterly despoiled, for the Lord has spoken this word. The earth dries up and withers. The world languishes and withers. The heavens languish together with the earth. The earth lies polluted under its inhabitants, for they have transgressed laws, violated the statutes, broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore, a curse devours the earth, and the inhabitants suffer for their guilt. These words are jarring and hard to hear for me. But do you hear the echoes of Genesis 1 in these words? Do you see the act of uncreation because of humanity in these words? The opening line of Isaiah 24 tells us that God is putting the land back the way it was before creation. The land is returning to a complete chaotic wasteland, or as many of us have heard it said, the land is returning to formless and void. The book of Isaiah is what we call prophetic literature. The purpose of prophetic literature was always to show the people that they are going astray and need to make corrections. Prophetic literature in this way is very much like the bumps on the side of the highway that alert the driver that they have veered off the road and need to get back on before they crash. The prophets used language like bumps and guardrails to jar the people alert back onto the path that they needed to travel. Poetry is language that helps us speak the unspeakable, to give voice by the way of words and images to that which is too hard to say, or to help us to listen to that which does not have an audible voice. The poet becomes a translator in this way. Prophetic literature is very much poetry. And as we do with poetry, we are not looking for the literal definition of the words in prophetic literature, but what those words are pointing us towards, the thing beyond the thing. So what is the thing beyond the thing that Isaiah 24 is trying to show us? I think the thing beyond the thing is that humanity is continuing to break covenant with God and the land, and the entirety of Isaiah 24, which you can go ahead and read, is the land crying out because of its suffering and bondage, the curse that humanity brought forward onto the land. Some people would go as far as to say that humanity itself is the curse that the land suffers under. Our actions have had dire consequences for the land and for all of creation in a way that nothing else has. I want to progress forward in the story of the land and its suffering. I want to look at Romans 8, verses 19 through 21. For the creation waits in eager expectation or desperate longing for the children of God to be revealed. For the creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of God. There is no doubt that the author of Romans is calling us back to Isaiah 24, which in itself calls us back to Genesis 3. But then also calls us forward to the arrival of those who live within the covenant and care for creation within their sacred vocation, the children of God. The author of Romans tells us that creation, the land, has been waiting in a desperate longing for the children of God, the ones who will keep covenant, to be revealed, because the land has hope. The land has a hope of liberation from bondage. The land has a hope of being set free from the curse it has been suffering. The land has a hope that it will share in the freedom and the glory of the children of God. If we are listening, the land has a lot to teach us. This is not to anthropomorphize the land, meaning to give the land human characteristics, as if to say that if we listen carefully on a still, calm summer night, we can hear the land speak. But rather to say that the land speaks in its own way, and we can learn to pay attention. We can learn to listen. Sometimes it is through the words of poets translating for us. But more often than not, it's by slowing down to pay attention to the way the land communicates. I have a friend who often has a hard time being understood by people, not because she cannot communicate, but rather because people do not slow down enough to understand her. Instead, they look to her parents to tell them what she is saying. At first, this is how I tried to understand her, solely through her parents as translators. But as I got to know her and spend time with her, her communication became clearer to me, and I began to understand her. But even now, I have to slow down and listen at the speed of her communication. I feel like she has given me insight into what it means to listen to the land. We can ask others to translate for us, but if we are willing to spend time with the land, we can learn to listen. But we must slow down and listen at the speed the land is communicating. We measure time by seconds, minutes, and hours. The land does not. The land may give us a few words over days of listening. It may give us a paragraph in a season. But the land is communicating to us always. Over the past few years, I've started a house garden of different plants. Sometimes I get busy and I forget to care for my plants. And they are always faithful to communicate with me and let me know that I am not living up to my responsibility to care for them. They live in a reality that they must wait on me, and in doing so, sometimes they suffer a little. When I fail to listen to their cries, they can suffer a little more. And sadly, I've had a couple of my plants die on me. Not because of anything that they did, but because I did not listen and care for them in the ways that they needed. And when they are cared for in the ways that they need, they grow and they help to give my house fresher oxygen. In this way, my plants care for me in return. These plants offer me a glimpse into what the land is crying out for. The land suffers and cannot care for us in return. But if we listen, the land will teach us how to care. It will teach us how it can be restored. The land can teach us what it looks like for us to live as children of God. The land also teaches us what it looks like to have hope. I think that as we learn to care for the land teaches us to have hope. The land teaches us that even when it's devastated, it can be restored. It teaches us about resurrection. One of my favorite Bible scholars is N.T. Wright, and he says this: Jesus is coming, plant a tree, which connects the idea of what will happen to this world with the idea of what we do in this world now. I was raised in a faith tradition that said, at the end of your life, you will have to stand before God and give an account of what you did with and in your life. If this is in fact what happens at the end of our lives, I believe one of the questions that God will ask us is, what did you do with the land?